Some historians believe that this little-known battle off the coast of West Africa marked the end of the Golden Age of Piracy. Fought in 1722 between the infamous pirate Captain Black Bart and a Royal Navy ship commanded by Captain Chaloner Ogle, no one present could have known the huge impact that this small but fierce battle would have on the future of slavery in America. Welcome to Walk the Plank. Oh, for a life at sea. John Roberts was born in 1682 in Pembrokeshire, Wales. No one seems to know why he changed his first name to Bartholomew, though many pirates took on an alias once they started their illicit careers. It's possible that he may have chosen to name himself after the well-known buccaneer Bartholomew Sharp. Sharp spent 7 years looting communities on the Pacific coast of South America during the early 18th century. There is also some uncertainty as to when Black Bart Roberts went to sea, although in some accounts he was said to be very young, probably no older than 13. Perhaps he was running away from home, searching for adventure, or simply looking for paid work. Black Bart must have worked his way up through the ranks, as by November of 1719 he was employed as second mate on a slave ship named the Princess. The ship sailed from England and arrived off the coast of Ghana by the following February. Anchored in the port of Anamabu and bartering for slaves to take to the West Indies, the Princess was captured by fellow Welshman Captain Howell Davis, and the crew were forced to join Davis and his band of pirates. Pirates regularly forced captured men into their service, refusal often meant death, so the crew of a detained ship felt that they had no choice. A livelihood made from the proceeds of human trafficking was lucrative, but the risks were very high. In the year 1719 alone, nearly 1 in 3 slaving vessels were attacked by pirates in West Africa. Open to persuasion. Davis and Black Bart had much in common. They had both been mates of a slave ship when they were forced into piracy and were able to converse together in Welsh. Already an experienced sailor, Black Bart was taken on board Davis's ship, the Royal Rover, and quickly promoted to the position of navigator. Black Bart was reluctant to carry out his practical duties, but quickly saw the benefits of his new life, stating, quote, "In an honest service there is thin commons, low wages, and hard labour. In this, plenty and satiety, pleasure and ease, liberty and power. And who would not balance creditor on this side, when all the hazard that is run for it, at worst, is only a sour look or two at choking? No, a merry life and a short one shall be my motto." For the prisoners, life on a slave ship was horrific. For the workers, it was unpleasant. There was little chance of promotion and the conditions were terrible, so for Black Bart adjusting to a life of piracy probably wasn't that difficult. Not long after, in a botched plot to kidnap and ransom the governor of the Portuguese island of Principe, Davis was killed. Within just 6 weeks of his capture, Black Bart was voted on as the new captain, and he, quote, accepted the honour, saying that since he had dipped his hands in muddy water and must be a pirate, it was better being a commander than a common man. Becoming Black Bart. His first call was to sneak back to Principe with his men and avenge the death of Davis. They killed as many men as they could find and looted any valuables. Black Bart was very good at his new job and carefully planned his attacks. Unlike other more reckless pirate captains, he ran a tight ship. Being a teetotaler, he never smoked either and expected the same behaviour from his men. Apparently, he was well-read, intelligent, disciplined, and fair-minded, but ruthless when it was needed. A lover of classical music, he kept musicians on board simply for entertainment purposes. He was also quite a pious man and kept a member of the clergy on board, refusing to launch any attacks on a Sunday. However, this didn't stop him from torturing, robbing, or killing. His dark hair and swarthy appearance probably led to his nickname, although it could have had something to do with his nature because he could sometimes be cruel. After sailing across the Atlantic to the Americas, Black Bart and his men were so successful in their practical efforts that by the spring of 1721 they had practically brought seaborne trade to a standstill. From Brazil to Newfoundland, they were able to capture and loot ship after ship. Black Bart and his men agreed upon a new pirate code and adopted an early skull and crossbones flag. Having bled the West Indies dry, Black Bart and his men sailed back to West Africa, where their campaign was just as successful. Let battle commence. In 1722, with his ship Royal Fortune, just one of many ships that he had captured and named Fortune, and two others named Ranger and Little Ranger, Black Bart and his company sailed into Whydah Harbour, now in modern-day Benin, and captured all 11 ships anchored there. A ransom of 8 pounds of gold dust per ship was agreed. But when the master of the slave ship Porcupine refused, Black Bart showed his cruel side and set the Porcupine on fire, with 80 of those poor wretches on board chained 2 and 2 together. Those who jumped overboard from the flames were seized by sharks. The Black Bart Company was being hunted by the Royal Navy. HMS Swallow was a 4th-rate 50-gun ship commanded by Captain Chaloner Ogle. After being given intelligence of Black Bart's location on the 5th of February 1722, Ogle came upon the 3 pirate ships whilst they were careening at Cape Lopez off the coast of Gabon. Believing that the Swallow was a merchant ship, Black Bart sent the Ranger, commanded by James Skyrim, out to take her. Giving the appearance of going out all sail, Ogle turned and led the Ranger further out to sea. Really, the Swallow was moving at a steady pace, slow enough for the Ranger to catch them. Once out of sight and earshot of the harbour, Ogle gave the order. Suddenly, the Swallow changed course and ran parallel with the Ranger and bore down on the 16-gun sloop. Opening the Swallow's gun ports, she fired on the Ranger. A broadside of 32-pound guns blasted the pirate ship. Ranger tried to run, but she was hit with a second broadside and then a third. Desperately trying to fire back, it was too late, and the main topmast collapsed. 10 of the pirate crew were killed and 20 were injured. Skyrim had his leg shot off by a cannonball. He refused to leave the deck, but the Ranger was overcome and forced to surrender. Those who survived were sent for trial to Principe. 4 days later, on the 9th of February, Black Bart and his men were able to take a ship named the Neptune just offshore. Part of her cargo was a decent amount of liquor, and although Bart didn't drink, his men celebrated all night by guzzling copious quantities of it on the beach. Pistol proof. The next day, the Swallow returned, and Black Bart and his men were still anchored in the harbour. Unaware that the Ranger had been captured at first sight, the pirates thought that it was the Ranger returning. According to legend, Bart was eating a breakfast of salmagundi, a large plated salad, with the captured Captain Hill of the Neptune. One of the pirates had once worked on and then deserted the Swallow, so he recognized the Royal Navy man-of-war. Wanting to fight, but knowing that his crew were still too drunk and in no fit state, Black Bart hatched a plan. They would need to let the Swallow sail deep into the harbour against the wind. Then the Royal Fortune could quickly nip past the Navy ship with the wind behind her. It exposed the pirate ship to the Swallow's guns, but only briefly, and they could hope to get away with one broadside, if any. It meant abandoning Little Ranger, but it was worth it if they could get away. Black Bart, confident in his plan, slowly finished his breakfast and, quote, made a gallant figure at the time of engagement, being dressed in a rich crimson damask waistcoat and breeches, a red feather in his hat, a gold chain round his neck, with a diamond cross hanging to it, a sword in his hand, and 2 pairs of pistols slung over his shoulders. He stood on deck and gave the command to sail past the Swallow. When these ships were almost level, a broadside hit the pirate ship and was quickly returned. The Swallow, unable to stop, drifted towards the shore. The plan had worked. But then the helmsman of the Royal Fortune was so drunk that he couldn't steer the ship straight. The Swallow came alongside again, and after delivering her second broadside, her crew fired small cannonballs called grape shot at the Royal Fortune. One hit Black Bart, tearing out his throat whilst he stood there on deck. He was killed instantly. The man who had been called pistol-proof and was said to be invincible was dead. He was thrown overboard and buried at sea with all his ornaments and arms by his men there in the middle of the battle. End of an era. Black Bart Roberts was right when he predicted that he should have a merry life and a short one. He was just 39 years old when he died, having taken over 450 ships and looted countless riches. Of the survivors of the Royal Fortune, the pirates were captured and taken to Cape Coast Castle. Many of them were wounded and died during the journey. Those who had been press-ganged into service were released. In the end, 54 men from Black Bart's company were hanged for piracy. Around 75 were black slaves that Bart had emancipated, and as if they hadn't been through enough, they were sold back into slavery. As a reward for his service, Captain Ogle was given a knighthood. He also took several ounces of gold dust from the Ranger and the Royal Fortune. Ogle went on to fight at the Battle of Cartagena de Indias in 1741 during the War of Jenkins' Ear between Spain and Great Britain. The Battle of Cape Lopez was a triumph for the Royal Navy and was the turning point in the war against pirates. Many consider the death of Black Bart to be the end of the Golden Age of Piracy. Black Bart Roberts has been described as the most successful pirate who ever lived. After Black Bart was killed, Ogle intended to go back and take the Little Ranger, which held most of the pirates' gold. However, Captain Hill, the captured commander of the Neptune, escaped with the ship and the treasure. Thank you for watching this episode of Walk the Plank. Please do subscribe if you enjoy these videos, and I'll see you next week for another one. Have a great week. Cheers!